just had a good HIIT workout in the basement. So,
What is that?
Oh, HIIT, high intensive interval training. And what that does is, and I've been doing it at the gym. It's easier at the gym. I do it on an elliptical, and you go for warm up for a minute, and then you just go as hard as you can for 30 seconds. And I do mean as hard as you can. And so by the time that 30 seconds is over, you're like, thank God. And then you just like jog, whatever you want to say, catch your breath for a minute, and then do it again, and do it at least 3 times. I typically do that 5 times, meaning 5 of those high intensity 30 seconds. And it draws sugar out of your bloodstream because it has to fortify your muscles to regenerate as a regenerative thing. So it's a really good thing for anybody that's diabetic, pre-diabetic, something like everybody in this country. It's a battle against sugar in this country because it's in everything. High fructose in all the different forms.
Not just regular sugar. Yeah.
It's the highly processed
weaponized, right?
Are weaponized. That's the truth. And, it's almost a daily thing that I am so angry that we have an FDA, that's Food and Drug Administration, that is weaponized against us.
Oh, yeah. And that is absolutely the truth. Yep.
In every regard. And we know that coming out of COVID, their complicity. Did I say that totally wrong? With complicity. That's easier. With the drug companies. And test yourselves. Let us know what those results are. Are you kidding me? They literally do that. They're completely bought off by the food industry, and which is why our food is poison compared to every place. We always compare it to Europe. And man, I'm on a tangent this morning. I told you,
I love it.
To go.
In
so many ways, man. A lot to talk about. I do want to announce, and I'm going to give you the share capability if I can find it. There we go. Okay, there you go. And now I want to share something because I want to announce that next week, and you don't know this, Merle, next week, I'm doing my first in-studio interview with Over 50 Starting Over. It will be here.
Really? What?
Yeah, I got a standing mic. And me and Domenic Zinicola here. Do you see the Blueprint for Life? Okay, so he's a good friend of mine. He started this blog recently, and it's right up our alley. It's basically his philosophy and growth and inspiration. That's his, right up our alley. He's a really nice guy, retired early, was a construction, contractor. And now he has this blog, A Blueprint for Life, where he shares these really insightful articles. And dude, he and I talk like you and I do. Like it can never end. Like you never want to stop talking. And
wow, that's really
it's going to
cool.
be a lot of fun. So I just want to let you guys know that.
Yeah,
that's coming up next Friday, 10 o'clock.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that.
Yes. So, boy, we have so much to talk about, Merle, and I want to let you kick it off because I'm going to get into a whole lot of current events and there's so many that are really disturbing. We just need to hit on a lot, but I think you had a few good things to start.
Well, there was something I wanted to bring up here today. 5 things you should never say to your boss. It's an article that I picked up from the Epoch Times or Epoch Times, however you say it.
That's interesting because I always thought of it as epic, but now that you say that, it is spelled like epoch. What does it mean?
That's a good question. I don't know. It must mean something, but I hear them themselves call it interchangeably epic or epoch.
Really?
So
in my head, I always
to a couple of
epic.
events. Yeah, same here. But I've heard them actually say epoch. So I am whatever. It's still a really cool resource. And their story, the Epoch Times, and how they came out of Falun Gong out of China.
Tell me about this.
Very interesting people. Have you heard of Falun Gong before?
No.
Falun Gong is a Chinese philosophy that's ancient, goes back, millennium. It is a philosophy of how to live a good moral life. And under the Communist Party in China, Falun Gong has been outlawed and they are hunted. In fact, they're the #1 resource for organ harvesting.
Oh my God.
they'll there are terrifying stories of people being tracked down by ambulances and accosted, dragged into the ambulance, never seen again. These organ harvesting for the Chinese Communist Party is big, big business. They can have any kind of organ for you fresh. It is sort of custom order. Very rich and wealthy people throughout the world go to China for organ transplants rather than waiting on a list. And
Oh, this
these
is
organs are
horrifying.
harvested from live people. They are tied down with things like a piano wire so that if they try to move, it'll cut into them.
Yeah.
And they will extract these organs without any kind of painkiller
Oh my
because that
God.
can impact the organ. So,
Oh,
of course, the person dies. And
oh
this
my
has been
God.
going on. This is documented. This has been going on for some time. So, Falun Gong, there are millions of people in Falun Gong. Many of them have escaped China and live here in the United States now. Epic Times is a product of Falun Gong. These are Chinese people that have escaped, and they have made it their mission to tell the world what's happening in China. That's the base of Epic Times. It's
I
pretty
didn't
cool,
know
actually.
that. Geez, what a way to start off the podcast.
I know.
But
I'm a
hey, you know what?
subscriber to Epic Times, and I love what they do. I love what they stand for. Their reporting is fantastic. It's true journalism, really,
Yo.
investigative journalism, and that is, as you and I have talked, what a lost art that is.
Well, it's not if you know where to go online.
That's true.
We
That's
both
true.
share stuff back and forth
Oh my
all the time.
gosh.
We've learned so much in the
Man, Perry,
past few
you've been
years.
sharing the most eye-opening stuff with me. You've been blowing me away, man.
And I'm glad I start to apologize because I know here's another 2 hours worth of,
Yeah. Yeah, I got time for this.
Yeah, I know. I
They're captivating,
apologize.
though. They're captivating. I
The
can't stop.
independent media is like, thank God, it's our saving grace. I did want to just mention though that about organ harvesting is still a thing right here in the U.S. as well, along with the what do you want to say? I wanted to say sex slavery, but there's just a lot of there's another word that is escaping me. It goes on at the border all the time, but
Oh yeah.
being abducted.
Human
And
trafficking. I mean,
that's the word I was looking for.
including sex,
Yeah.
slavery, and
And
it is
organ harvesting.
it's
Yes.
happening. I mean, in the millions, and of
Yeah.
course, it's gotten nothing but worse since the border has turned into pure chaos, along with
Yeah.
so many other things here in this country.
You know what I want to throw out before you get, because I'm going to forget, and it just came into my mind.
Yeah, go, man.
I saw I like to do those shorts on YouTube. I get hung up on them and I just keep flipping.
So
They're
many
1 minute
people do.
shorts.
Yeah.
And saw this one guy, black guy, talking about
Oh, reparations.
Jeez,
Another R
the
word.
words. So he was talking about reparations. He goes, well, what do we do about the 3,700 plus black slave owners from that period of time that enslaved over 12,000 people? What do we do about them? Are they paying or are they receiving money? Dude, I looked it up. It is like 12,700. Go ahead and Google that right now, or whatever search engine. 12,700 black slave owners back in the day.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
enslaved
Wait,
over.
let me ask you, had
12,000.
you heard of that before?
No, I've never heard of that.
Not heard of that before. Isn't
Well,
that
why is that?
interesting?
Now, why is that?
Yeah,
Throws a
right.
whole
That's what I
monkey
wanted.
wrench into the whole
That's
thing,
right.
doesn't it?
That's right. Well, when you really consider the fact that, where did we get these slaves from? We got them from African warlords.
They were sold to us by black people in Africa.
Exactly. And so it's something I was bringing up last during the last show, is that the people that are migrating here from Africa do not see anything in common with the black population.
I think
here
you said that in the
United
last
States.
show.
That's exactly what I just said, is that this is where this all comes from. So here in the United States, we've got this history of slavery and black people. And it's interesting to me that in my own vernacular, I see black people as a purely American thing. Those other guys that are coming over, they're Africans. It's different from being black. Like, for instance, Barack Obama, he's African American. he really doesn't have the real black experience. If you look
Right.
at his roots, he doesn't go back to slavery. He goes to
Not to mention a very privileged upbringing. So
right, and yeah, that's
yeah,
right. And gosh, I wonder about maybe his family could have been on the other side of the slavery coin, but we
yeah,
don't know that.
right,
I know that in my own family, I have family members that are slaves, and I have family members that are slave owners. So I think that's a common black experience here. Black people
sure,
don't like to talk about the fact
sure,
that the slave owner is also in our blood. They're part of our family. So
yeah.
we are truly a part of this country in a very interesting way, and we
Mm.
don't share that with really anybody else in this world.
Right. That's why we need to just see ourselves as Americans
I
and come
agree.
back to
It
that
would be
pride.
so much better if we could just all look at ourselves as a unified American. And, then we could talk about our differences. But first and foremost, we have that in common.
Mhm.
And, it's really back to the love thy neighbor. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
our Americans are our neighbors. And as when Americans are doing well, around us, we're doing well. And we have to remember that because it is very important for our welfare.
United we
Anyway,
stand, divided we fall.
and everyone knows it. Everyone
No, not
knows it. And
really.
that's why there's
That's
well,
why I
that's
try
why
to say it. I
there's
want to say that every show because no one says
well,
it
and you're right. You're
because they
right. I
want to
mean, there's
divide
so
us
many, you're right. There's so many mechanisms out there that are bent on
intentionally.
dividing us. And we see
Intentionally.
this happening in so many places. I know we're going to get to what's happening in our college campuses and things
Oh
like that.
God, I can't wait to talk
These are
about this.
all mechanisms to divide us. But anyway, I
Yeah.
was going to talk a little bit about business here. 5 things you should never say to your boss. I love this article because it starts out with a worker saying to their boss, "I'm too hungover to come into work today." Okay, that would be a very bad thing to say to your boss, I think.
I think that
But
ranks as number one. Yeah. Yeah.
it really, but the thing this article brings out is that, we have these business environments where we say we're family,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
just like
Yep.
family over here.
Good
Well,
point.
many ways it is like family. You get to see these people
Anyways.
every day. You can't get away from them. It's sort of like that. But we get comfortable and think that, hey, we can just say whatever we want. We've got to be careful
Yeah, I
because here,
totally disagree. You got to watch everything, especially with DEI, which better be on its way out this year
that's
because
right.
it's
That's
screwing up
right.
everything.
And you
Go
have to
ahead.
remember, your boss, as cool as he or she may be, this is reading from the article, is running a
Mhm.
business. Don't ever forget that they'll always make decisions in the business's best interest first. And don't make
Yes.
the mistake, the family work vibe for a real family. I've seen too many people get overly comfortable. So there's an example of somebody that was bragging to their boss about how much they can drink,
Oh, wow.
and that person only lasted a couple of weeks. But let's get started
Oh,
here.
God.
Here's one. I like this one. Number one, Barry, is it's not my fault. This is something you should never say to
Oh,
your boss.
oh, yeah. Oh, that's a huge faux pas. And you know what? That's super common. You know,
Yeah.
especially in corporate America, the cover my butt mentality. Throw someone else
Mhm.
under the bus before I get, oh, yeah, it's not my fault. You know what, dude? I would even go as far as to say that separates the wheat from the chaff. Like there's the
Oh, I agree.
25% that will never say that, know way better than to say that. And those are the people that you trust. And those are the people that
Yes.
excel. And the 75% that will say that will probably stay status quo, fly under the radar.
Good comments. I think you're saying 75, but have you noticed this 80-20 rule?
Pareto principle. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
kind of works out that these there's going to be the conscientious 20%ers that are out there and in
Yeah.
every organization. Here's a
Yeah.
couple of comments. I totally agree with what you're saying here. As a person that has had people reporting to them, I agree with this. Don't go to bosses with a problem and no solution. Your manager
Yes.
is looking for problem solvers and likely already has a long list of problems. The more you solve problems independently, the more valuable you become.
That's a good one.
That is really good.
We're back to the Pareto principle.
And
Because
go ahead. Yeah.
no, yeah, we're back to the Pareto principle because 80% of people know you know this, you go any committees are the worst. Committees built the camel, as they say. And 80%
Wait,
of
I
people,
never heard that before.
you got to be
Committees
kidding
built the
me.
camel? No,
Yeah,
that
it's the
sounds, what
screwed
does
up
that
horse.
mean?
Yeah.
That's
I
hilarious.
can't believe you
heard
never
that.
heard of that.
I know. I love that. I just heard that. That's cool.
So 80% of people will always be the, oh, that'll never work. All they got are the naysayers. And
Right.
and I was recently in a committee with a local group where that happened to me as well. They were like, well, where can we have this meeting? I brought up something based on logistics and availability. It was a great, and that'll never, and I let that go on for a little while. And then I said, do you have any suggestions? Quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the naysayers versus the people that actually have something constructive to say. If you're going to be a naysayer, then back it up with a solution.
I agree. So easy to be a naysayer.
It's so
I mean,
easy.
you don't even have to have one
so
brain
smart.
cell, right?
No,
exactly.
for sure.
There's so many of these people out there.
God, I'm on fire today, Merle. I'm on fire.
Oh, you got me going here, man. Here's another one. Don't ever say it's not my fault. Never minimize, never defend. Always be accountable. Show
That's
that
hard.
you recognize the problem and are proactive about recommending a solution. So it's a common theme here.
Stick your neck out.
Being accountable is uphill, but those are the people that are the change makers out there.
Because it takes bravery.
Yes, and believe me, you'll be noticed if you take responsibility.
I totally agree with that, man. It takes guts, but it also takes smarts, because you have to be able to be ready to back up your actions with some solutions again.
You know, I was raised like this. Like, for instance, my father, there's no way you could tell him, no, I didn't do that. My brother, he did that. Oh, no. It didn't matter who did it. This is your... He just hearing you at that point. But I'm so glad I was raised that way, because it is a different way of thinking. Here's one, moving to number 2. I think we're all trying too hard. Okay. I don't think I've ever said that before.
I've never heard that.
Here's the situation. While you may have your own opinions about what tasks are important, how they should be approached, it's best to keep any negative evaluations to yourself. Let's see. This person is describing a time when he worked overtime on a critical project, and a young junior marketer walked into the meeting room with his supervisor. Here's a quote. He was feeling particularly confident and told the supervisor, "I think we're trying too hard. We should just go with the flow and take our time." Well, the room went silent, and you could hear a pin drop. This wasn't the time for leisurely work. We were up against a deadline. Needless to say, it wasn't received kindly. So,
I've never, but you know what?
This is kind of a newer
I was just going to say that.
Here.
I could imagine that is a newer, but I've never heard that in my tenure as a younger worker of any kind. But I could imagine that that's been said a lot more in recent years. The last 10 years.
You know, I agree. It's funny because there's a picture of an office setting here, and it's a very, very young people that look like they had someone. One of them had just said, "I think we're all trying too hard." You just hear it.
We need a safe space.
Yeah, exactly. We need to bring some petting puppies in now so we can calm down. Yeah. All right. How about this one? I'll quit if ... Wow. Okay, another one that, our generation didn't really say this.
Right, correct.
Kind of knew not to say this, but let me just read what it says. I think this is one of those entitlement generations that say, oh, I'll just quit. If they make me come in at 8:00 in the morning, I'll quit. This kind of thing.
Agreed.
Let me read this. Being successful in the workplace calls for displaying maturity. Using threats like "I'll quit if" to get what you want can often have negative consequences. Here's the advice. Instead of engaging in professional discussions about career expectations and plans, professional discussions about career expectations and plans is far more likely to yield productive outcomes. So I guess he's saying, instead of saying "I'll quit if," start talking about career expectations and plans. I guess that's good advice, but I just think I'll quit if is a loser mentality.
Oh God, is it ever? For some reason, that made me think of one thing that in my 20s, I was managing a small agency and I hired people and even fired a couple. I hated that.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's a bad deal.
one thing that I would tell everybody, one of the few mature things that I actually, pieces of advice I had is I can't control how talented you are. But you can control, and maybe you can't control how talented you are, but you can't control just simply being on time. It's very important to be on time. And if you're on time, always on time, that's accountability. That's a lot. That's something so easily within your control.
That's great wisdom, Barry. And, I have heard the saying that 90% of success is just showing up.
Yeah.
I was telling my kids who are both in their early 30s that if you just show up and be accountable, you're going to be head and shoulders above the rest of the group that you're competing against out there, because it is a competition. Because these people, your generation doesn't think that way, but everybody else does. So just show up, like with that just little thing. If you show up on time or 5 minutes ahead of time,
that's even better.
They're going to look at you and think, this person is a standout.
Conscientious. It says you're conscientious.
We need to raise this person in the ranks.
But this reminds me of, you gave your kids, it's a misnomer. They're 27 and 30, adults. Something like that.
Yeah, they're both in their 30s now.
You told me about a piece of advice that you gave them recently, was along these lines, it was something like just showing up and you're going to be head and shoulders above.
That's it. That's all they got to do. Yeah, just show up. And
that's how low the bar is today.
Well, it's so true, right? Oh. And but we need people that are accountable. I mean, you just said it. If we could just start with accountability, we can mold that clay into something fantastic. So accountability is the base that we start with. I love that. Yeah. Here's the next one, Barry. That's not my job.
Oh my God. Oh, that's a big one. And that one I heard my entire life.
Me too.
As opposed to the other ones that were, I heard that that's not my job. Oh God. And I think that's 100% applicable to the smallest of businesses to the largest of corporate.
I think you're right.
I think you're right there. And of course, when you get into big corporate America, it's maybe even more common because, you fly under the radar so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're the smaller the business, the more hats you have to wear. But there is nothing that just makes me so more angry than that.
Well, Barry, it's like this saying could be substituted for the word bureaucracy. That's not my job. Like when you go to the motor vehicle, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, it's just like everyone's standing there. That's not my job. It's just,
you know what? I think you hit on something. It's probably the most common in a government-run facility.
That's right. And it's just, I mean, you want help. It's not my job, but let me read what it has to say. I know this is frustrating.
Oh, that one made me angry. That one made me angry. Yeah.
Let me just throw some more gasoline on this one.
Yeah.
Here's what the experts are saying. Never say, that's not my job. The key to success in any career is adaptability. Job descriptions change and company goals change. If you're rigid about what you will and will not do, you will not last. Managers and bosses want team players who are flexible to the needs of the business. And Barry, when I think about the vertical market that I'm in and working with hospitals, one thing came to mind when I read this is that I have met a bunch of nurses that are in C-level positions within hospitals, and the role is called Chief Nurse Informatics Officer. And so here's what happens.
Informatics?
Informatics. It's information and like information. It's almost like an IT kind of role. It's a crossbreed between nursing and IT. So here's what happens is nurses are constantly with their patients, but they're constantly having to fiddle with these alarms and alerts and these systems. So some nurses are like, this thing isn't working. So they take it upon themselves to figure out how to make it work. And then they figure out how to make this gadget work over here. This thing isn't working. And then they figure out how to make that one work. And then pretty soon somebody comes and says, hey, I bet you would be great as a liaison between IT and nursing so we can get our job done. And suddenly they have a very high paying C-level position with lots of influence in the hospital.
In healthcare, it's such a mess. That is really needed.
You know what? That's not my job thing should never be said in healthcare. But the people that go back to the accountability thing, the people that are accountable on that, they make hay.
Well, and I'll also say people that say it's not my job, they're watching a clock and trying to get out the door. And what a miserable existence that is. All day, every day. Yeah, you're hating your day.
It's like you're in prison.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas if you like your job, if you take pride in your job, the time goes by very quickly and you're taking on those additional things just to try to make the world, your environment a better place. And dude, you're just happier. Every day of your life is so much happier than this. It's not my job person.
Well, and its character is at the center of this, right? I mean, every one of these things that we talked about, and it seems that the more you build your character, the happier you're going to be in life. And this is one of those things. I totally
are good, Merle. I like this article.
Here's the last one. Number 5 is, I assumed you would already know. I'll have to read a little bit of that so you understand what they're saying, because I didn't at first either. But they're saying that that an employee should never let the boss be surprised by an issue. So you see where this is going. Don't ever utter, I assumed you'd already know. Communication and communicating is vital to the success of any business. If you see an issue starting to arise, flag it and research why it's happening, as well as possible ways to solve it. Keep quiet about problems or issues. Keeping quiet about problems or issues is a massive source of frustration for bosses. So it goes on to talk about how to bring these kinds of things up, but it goes back to that same thing as being vigilant, acting as you're kind of the CEO of your own position. And when you see these things, don't just go to your boss and say, hey, there's a problem. Go to your boss with the problem and a possible solution. Yeah, that's right.
You know what? That's a really good way to put that, because as you were unfolding that, I was thinking, well, the other side of the coin is the narc that goes to the boss all the time with all these problems, the kiss butt kind of person that, telling the boss about all these problems. But no, if you had the CEO mentality, I'm my own CEO, and you go problem and solution, then you're like seeing eye to eye, playing on the level.
It's so refreshing to have an employee come to you and say, hey, I got this problem, but I think I have a solution to this. Let's talk this out.
It's very mature.
I read a book as a manager. I read a book called The 10-Minute Manager, which is a short book. I think every manager should read this. It's timeless advice in it. But one of them was don't do your employees' work. And one of them, it talks about a scenario where somebody comes in and just, this problem is happening and that problem is happening and this problem. What are you going to do about it? But what the 10-minute manager does is turn it around on the employee and say, well, you tell me what you think ought to be done.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to handle
that. Would extract all kinds of great information that I could use. And so, but if you just come with that prepared already, that really is a relief to any manager. So
the boss that says that will condition his employees right away. Oh, I know what he's going to say. So,
right. Here's the other one too, is it prevents them from just coming in and loading up your inbox. You know what I'm saying? With different issues and problems. They stop doing that because they're like, oh crap, Merle's going to want a solution to this.
That's really good. And it reminds me of something I've seen my entire career, because I've had a couple of leadership coaches as clients for years, decades. And so I learned early on, and I've witnessed people getting promoted into positions that have had no leadership training and no skills in that managerial.
I've seen that too. Boy, that's a terrible thing.
Once you know that is an issue, then you go, oh, yeah, I see that all the time. Leadership training is incredibly important. Some people are natural leaders, but maybe most of us are not, and just need to learn these things that you've just been teaching us right now. I mean, it's the difference. And then, because if you promote people that don't have natural leadership skills and you don't give them the training, then what do? They become one of those horrible bosses that teach through being condescending.
That's right.
And through fear, because they don't want to get found out. So they intimidate. And then that's what the people underneath of them do. And it becomes your culture. It's horrible.
Boy, that was really well said, because that's like a process. I mean, it's a cookie cutter for that type of an environment where it's all uphill. This creates clock watchers, because they can't wait to get out of there. And they're not going to do extra things like we talked about, because they don't actually respect their boss.
Correct.
And that's a big deal, is, respecting leadership training should include the fact that the leader needs to be able to have the ability to get down in the trenches with their troops, and that anything that you're asking them to do, that you're willing to do as well. And you earn respect that way. And when people respect you, they will go above and beyond because they don't want to let you down. Yeah. I was talking to this guy that I met that knew my father, and my father was a track coach at one time before I was born. And this man that I met through LinkedIn was my dad was his coach. And he was telling me that one of the things, this guy ended up becoming a bank president. He's in his late 70s now, and he's retired and very successful. And he says that he was raised by his mother and his grandmother. He didn't have a male figure, a father figure in the house, and that my dad had become a father figure to him. And he said that that my dad had operated with such integrity and he demanded more out of this team than they thought that they could deliver. But they rose to the occasion because they did not want to let him down.
Yeah.
And from that seed that was planted, this man was able to do great things in his life, and then teach other people that were underprivileged how even though they have a lack of resource in their life, like not having a father, that there are ways to get around this. And it's a beautiful thing. When you run into people with character, it sure is infectious, and it changes the world. I'm just saying,
I agree.
These are nuggets of that you can take to work and really change the business, change the surroundings, and improve revenue. Everything happens when you do this kind of stuff.
What a great way to wind up this segment. And I think that this was incredibly valuable. I really appreciate you sharing that. It was a really great conversation, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
I really agree with everything you say. You ready to move on? There's something incredibly important.
Go right ahead. Yes.
Dude, I woke up to this headline. I have not read this article. I'm hoping that you could clue me into what's going on here. Standoff in the skies. Moment U.S. F-16 fighters are scrambled to intercept Russian nuclear bomber near Alaska airspace in the latest flashpoint between the two superpowers. Do you know about this?
No.
Whoa. Okay. Well, I don't either. I haven't read this. I was hoping that you knew what was up here. So Putin set up two Tu-95MS nuclear bombers over the Bering Strait on yesterday. Jets remained in international airspace and were not a threat, NORAD said. So, I was really hoping that you know. I haven't read this.
There's a lot of stuff that's happening right now, Barry, and it has everything to do with the fact that the United States is showing extreme weakness and indecision. And that is always a time when our enemies are going to test our resolve. And I see this happening with Putin. I mean, you take a look at, I just read an article this morning about how Blinken, our Secretary of State, is saying that China has just crossed a major Joe Biden red line, and that is that Biden had warned China not to interfere in Ukraine and give the Russians any kind of support, military support for Russia. So Blinken is saying that, nope, that's been violated. China has been infusing all kinds of technology and money into Russia. So that red line has been crossed, and the speculation is, what is Joe Biden and what is the administration going to do about it? And it looks like they're going to do nothing about it. And here's the deal, Barry, is that when we do nothing about these red lines, then it encourages our enemies to go past other red lines.
They just move the bar.
Yeah. So, you see this article, and this is more of the same. We're testing the resolve, the China balloon comes over. We do nothing. We let the balloon collect all kinds of information, which has been transmitted back to the CCP, and then we shoot it down, and we don't even get any of the scraps. I mean,
I know.
Don't even know what the technology was.
If we could survive another 6 months, whatever it is, to get rid of this regime, it'll be a miracle. What a disaster this Biden administration has been. That I had a conversation with a friend a week or so ago who he's really into mainstream media, and so therefore all roads will lead back to Trump, of course, sooner or later. So I don't go there. I don't go there very much, but we were dancing around politics a little bit, and I, mentioned the economy, and he's like, "Oh, it's not that bad. This isn't that bad." And I said, "Dude, my $80 grocery bill is now always like $135. That's about a 50% increase. We all know that." He goes, "Oh, it's not that bad." And he said, "It's just a little bit here or there." And I know that because in his mind, the other option is Trump, a Trump economy. And he'd rather pay an exorbitant amount more than because of the Trump hate. But I had this conversation with Lisa, and she's like, it made her very angry because she's like, well, people like my brother who could barely make ends meet in the beginning now are going into astronomical credit card debt at 21% interest. It's the people, okay, like, thank God you have means, okay? But most of us, a lot of us Americans do not, and are really suffering and starving, going without food, going without a lot of things. I know I intended on buying a car a couple of years ago. It was just, I had decided at this point because I'd have a good trade-in value. With this regime in power, no way am I going to buy a car right now.
Well, and the housing market has been destroyed.
God.
I can't. You want to buy a house? Well, look at how the interest rate has skyrocketed. Look how the hedge funds have destroyed the market by buying up all of this property at exorbitant prices, and artificially inflating the prices of houses.
Not many people seem to know that the hedge funds are really behind most of this.
Oh my gosh, Barry, it was so crazy. I told this story a bunch of times, but when I was trying to buy a house in Los Angeles, it was like the house would go on the market. Within an hour, the hedge fund had already put not only a bid on it at offering price. Many times they'd offer up to $100,000 or more over the offering price. So you could never, first off, you couldn't buy a house because it would get snapped up before you knew about it. And then if you did get a chance to bid on it, this unknown invisible hand would always trump whatever you put out there. It was like the Monopoly guy was following you around, and it was like, oh, really? I got plenty of money, and he's just throwing money at it, just fake money flying all around and everything. Yeah, I'll put a hotel on that.
Well, I could also put this in perspective in this regard. My tenant, who's in here for 3 months, and she's here. She was in Florida. She's this very vibrant, healthy 77-year-old. You say 77, you think, wow, she's pretty old. She's got a lot of years ahead of her. She was in Florida taking care of her mother. She hated Florida, she told me, and grew up in Shaker Heights. So she's back here. She wanted, because everybody told her, oh yeah, move to Cleveland. Really affordable. That's the way to go. So she told me she sold her place outright for 350 cash. I mean, like she had 350 to work with. She comes up here, starts looking. She's got a realtor and everything. And she's like, it's not really all that affordable here either now. And I said, maybe you want to rent for a year or so. Because I don't know, maybe this is something of a bubble, but I hear a lot of people saying, nah, it's never going to go back. And with the hedge fund companies doing what they're doing, I don't know if it's a bubble.
I don't either.
Yeah, I feel so bad for the younger people, though. I really do.
Well, speaking of that, I've got a video clip about the younger generation right now out of MSNBC that was sort of shocking to me that I would like to play at this point and get your feedback on.
Don't forget to share the sound.
I thank you for that. let me go to this, but they've got this at the bottom. I really found this to be very, very interesting. Let's see if I can pull this up. Okay, now this is this is on MSNBC, but Charlie Kirk weighed in on this first.
For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Yep. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. Young people aren't having sex. They're not meeting. They're not mating. The pool of emotionally and economically viable men shrinks every day, which lessens household formation. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off. They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries, and they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants, so the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own a housing. Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up, because if 1 million people dying would be bad, it would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card. Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them. And then every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious, they're more depressed, they're more obese, they're more addicted. And we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen by ensuring the people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people. So,
you know, dude, all of that, that
was so well said.
It was. And all this comes back to everything that we talk about all the time. And that 100% comes back to the complete corruption of our entire government system. And, you know, passing 95 billion last week to go to, once again, to Ukraine and to Israel and to Taiwan. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this. It's happening against our will.
I agree.
Once again. And so, and there's our most gigantic tax of the last 4 years. It's called inflation, which is going to happen every time these bills are passed. And where's that money going? It's 90% going to the Raytheons, the Halliburtons, the Lockheed Martins,
Boeing. Have you seen these whistleblowers that keep ending up dead?
Yesterday, another one. Yeah.
And that's the military-industrial complex. Yep, deep state. That's the cabal. They're it's infuriating. Active.
And so, I feel like 2024 is the year where awareness is starting to happen, but it's not happening quick enough. This makes me think of a statistic when we on Sagar and Crystal's show, Breaking Points, earlier this week. They were quoting statistics. They did a poll, or somebody did a poll, but they were talking about this poll that said, this is kind of alarming, that the majority of the medium age of voters is 55 years old, if you could believe that.
Wow.
Okay. So now people 50 to 60, I'll probably get this wrong by like 1 percentage point or so, but the age group 50 to 60, something like 56% of those people get their news from mainstream media. That's way too many.
That is
because I've been thinking that there was more of a movement away from mainstream media, but that's too high.
Yes.
When you consider that the median age is 55 years old.
They're all being brainwashed, in other words.
60 and up, it was like 59% mainstream media.
Really?
Okay. So that's that's very disheartening, is my point.
Well, it is. And let me just let's I totally agree with you. Let me back up to the other statement you made about young people and how you feel sorry for them, because that's why I played that clip.
Yeah.
And you look at what this person is saying. I love that this came from MSNBC too, because I mean, this is the absolute truth of what's going on. If it came from Fox,
half the America wouldn't listen.
Oh, we don't believe that. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So hopefully those people you just talked about heard this on mainstream media.
Yeah.
Here's Charlie Kirk weighing in on this. And as you know, Charlie Kirk, he's not even 30 years old yet. And he goes to these campuses. Right? And oh, yeah, he's a young guy. He's probably like 27.
I see YouTube
he's a prodigy.
He's smart.
That guy's a prodigy. Yeah. And so he goes to these college campuses. And of course, he's a conservative. So nobody wants him there. Yeah. And all these people come out in droves to debate him. And if you ever watch any of these clips,
I do.
My gosh,
all the time,
he's
almost
really
every day.
Good. He's got a great brain. But here's what he says about this clip. This is a very important clip. I speak at more college campuses and with more college kids than perhaps anyone else in the country. And what this man is saying is 100% true. Watch and have your eyes open. So let's just look at what's happening with our kids. And they're not getting married. They're not having children. They don't plan on having children. We've got this gender dysphoria thing that's happening. We know that there's a traditional pathway that we've seen over thousands of years to happiness and fulfillment. And we see that this is not the path. And now we've got the way our economy has been jacked up, the thing that he said, these men, they don't have a viable income to support a family. So the family core is being crushed.
Intentionally.
And the ability to have family is being crushed. And when you look at a lot of these dystopian movies like 1984 or Brave New World, you see the core of power for tyranny starts with breaking down the family and making Big Brother your family. And
North Korea, dude. Yeah.
And China, we see that in the Cultural Revolution is, Mao becomes your father. And here in the United States with the Civil Rights Movement, we've seen where the government becomes your daddy, and we don't need to have a daddy under the welfare system. In fact, he's a deficit to your income.
I want to say a great tool for that. It always comes a wolf in sheep's clothing, the whole toxic masculinity thing. Oh, believe all women, all of those trends. But toxic masculinity and that's a tool that's being used and very much perpetrated by the China influence, the death by 1,000 pinpricks type of thing, while they are trying to prop up masculinity amongst their youths.
They really are.
They really are.
That is a big deal.
And so this whole men, boys, young men are growing up with all this anxiety. And the far left is always wants to make this unnatural. If we can twist nature, we can make a utopia. The problem is when you twist nature, you create anxiety. People hate their own nature. They feel anxiety and guilt about just being a man, having sexual feelings. You can't approach a woman. You have to ask permission and all these other things. Get like a legal contract signed if you're going to go on a date. Maybe, oh my God, have sex. And this is a big, probably the number one reason for Jordan Peterson's prominence is that he teaches young men, first of all, clean your room. Well, what does that mean? It means if you can just start with making your bed and cleaning your room, you accomplish something for the day. Now,
it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. But he also teaches them that it's okay to be a provider. It's okay to be a man, and the youth is just hungry for this today. So we need to realize that there are so many forces at work against us. There's China, and they're separate. There's Russia. There's Soros. There's all of the, frankly, every country in America hates us because everything that we get involved with, we turn to crap. Afghanistan, I could go on and on. Of course, you know this. So they don't care how we fall, how we die. They're just happy. They're just having a blast watching it. Toxic masculinity. Oh, they love it. Laughing all day long.
Well, look at the part that this person was talking about, the rage that it's created. That this process that's been inflicted on our youth in America has created a rage. And the rage is stemming from a hopelessness regarding their future.
Yeah.
And this person is talking about how these young people see this and they have every right to be upset and that they're in a rage. And boy, have we ever seen this leading up to today. I've seen countless videos of kids. Usually it's black and white, and they are just beating the living crap out of somebody. Yeah. They're ganging up on one or two people and just kicking them in the face and everything. There's a lack of love there. But then this thing that's happening on our college campuses right now is completely out of control. And when I think about how there are these organizations, many of them sponsored by George Soros, that has infused all of this money and organization. This didn't happen spontaneously. This was a planned event. It is sponsored by very rich and wealthy people, including George Soros. And they're taking advantage of the rage in these youth that they themselves have created. And so they're taking advantage of that wave of rage and they're directing it into their agenda. And when we take a look at what's happening in Israel and Gaza, this whole thing appears to be a creation to cause disunification, cause brother to be against brother, child against father. I mean, it is this complete thing. And what's the answer? Well, I don't have any answers for this.
Awareness.
I think you said huge.
Yeah, what you said was absolutely spot on and brilliant. And before you start, you guys, anyone's thinking this is conspiracy theory. No, we know this for a fact because the arrest, if I got this right, is Washington University in St. Louis. Yesterday, James Lyndsey came out with his latest podcast talking about this. I was going to send it to you, and I'm like, I can't send him.
Oh, you should just send it to me, man. Yeah,
it won't only 20 minutes. I still
want to listen to it.
I will after this.
I love that guy.
Geez, so do I, because he puts things so clearly and backs everything up with proof. So there was at least 100 arrests in that what do you call it, protest, and the majority of them, the minority, were from the campus, being faculty and students. The majority were completely unrelated to the entire area. They were shipped in. They are like career protesters.
That's right. That's exactly
right. And you
right.
just explained it. The Soros-backed and other groups like that, and he called it, I think he called it controlled spontaneity, because it is supposed to look like, oh my God, America is like erupting into this divisive protesting stuff. And no, it is contrived. It's 100% contrived.
That's absolutely right.
And they interviewed many of the actual students who are like, no, I don't really know why I'm here, but I got an email, and it's an active, an activism thing that it seemed like I should be a part of. Literally.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude, that's what's going on. So this is my point. I hope 2024 is the year of awareness. All of this starts coming out of the bag. We're doing our part. I hope that you guys share this important information.
To your point, I believe that in Washington, there's lots of discussion about how this is going, and Democrats are starting to, I think that they may have thought this would work out in their favor. They're now concerned that this is going to backfire and work against them. And I think who cares if it works against Democrats or Republicans? It's working against the United States. We're Americans, for God's sake.
I will say a bit of hope.
When you raise a Palestinian flag on a college campus that is completely funded by our tax dollars, what? How can that even be a thing? I mean, it's crazy.
I have two. First of all, I wanted to say that I was talking to Lisa about this, who somehow, some way, she watches mainstream media, both sides, all sides. And she says that this is on MSNBC and stuff. So I was like amazed at that. I was like,
I'm
wow,
glad to hear that.
Very glad to hear that. Just like you just played a clip from MSNBC.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was
God
really
for that.
good.
Now, the other side that I wanted to say, and because I want you to chime in.
Yeah.
You said about the Palestinian flag. I still think, hey, man, freedom of speech. You're allowed to do that.
Freedom of speech. I agree.
As long as you're not calling for death. You can't do that.
I agree with freedom of speech. I do think that there are principles that we should look at from an American point of view.
Death.
Right. I agree that, but I do think it's a big black eye for our enemies to see the Palestinian flag being raised in places that are completely federalized. Our campuses are federalized. They are our tax dollars go to all of these campuses. They'd fall apart without that support, and therefore the flag raising is more meaningful. But I do see the freedom of speech thing, but it gets me right in the gut when I see that kind of stuff. I don't like it personally, but I see your point. Can I just make the James Lyndsey? I wanted just to talk about him for a second and this platform that he has called New Discourses. And the reason why Barry and I really like this guy is because of the concept that he has around New Discourses. First off, James Lyndsey, I mean, as I listen to this guy, what a great communicator and what a deep thinker this guy is. I highly
everything with proof.
I highly recommend you listen to this guy's podcast. But here's something he says about New Discourses. He says, New Discourses is by design meant to be apolitical in the usual sense. That means it's not interested in conservative, progressive, left, right, center, or any other particular political stance. It is, in this regard, only broadly liberal in the philosophical and ethical stance. In that case, whether you're a progressive left liberal or conservative right liberal, traditional or classical, in any case, you're likely to find what you're doing, what we're doing, refreshing. And if you don't, we can talk about it.
Yes.
That's the point. Barry, that reminds me so much of you and I.
Yes.
I mean, we've been doing the exact same thing, just the pair of us instead of just him. But boy, his stuff, I mean, he is such an intellectual that I have to when I'm listening to him, I have to stop and take notes and sometimes look up what he's talking about too.
Dude, I have to listen to every one of his podcasts twice. I do. Because the first time I'm blown away, and then the second time I'm trying to remember some of the facts. But what's probably his value proposition. I do this with clients all the time. Your value proposition is something that you bring to your business that is hard for your competition to reproduce because it's uniquely you. In his case, he studies all the things that he's become, he's warning against, meaning the Quran, the Marxist doctrine, all of those. He studied them. He's an expert on them. So that's why he can now talk about what's going on.
And that is such a key. Often,
we know only the top layer of stuff. You and I, what I think you and I find refreshing about him. We're learning the deeper stuff through him.
And we have jobs, so we can't focus 100% on this stuff. So, and this guy is doing that.
And that is his job. He's an author.
Doing that. Yeah, exactly. And let me just, the one that he did on the United Nations that you sent to me, I thought was mind blowing.
That was a couple of weeks ago. Kind of forgot about it.
And it was a long one. It was nearly 3 hours long, but oh my God. This is overwhelming. I'm just going to read you the preface to this whole thing because it sort of encapsulates the whole thing. But I was blown away by this. This podcast was his episode 139, the United Nations. he's saying in it that the United Nations is a religious organization, and the religion behind it is a cult. More specifically, it is a theosophical cult based on evolutionary vision. Now, I'm gonna define what theosophical means, because I actually did not know.
I had to look it up. Yeah,
it's a noun. It's any of a number of philosophies maintaining that a knowledge of God may be achieved through spiritual ecstasy, direct intuition, or special individual relations, especially the movement founded in 1875 as the Theosophical Society. This is that's the definition, and it's diabolically against Christianity. The thing about Christianity is there's no secrets. Everything about God has been revealed, and so this actually is more of a Gnostic approach, where you have to have this secret knowledge in order to be a part of this. Let me go on and say that this cult is based on an evolutionary vision for mankind that it wants to control. The fact is revealed in a strange book by late UN bigwig and creator of the World Core curriculum, which is Common Core here in the United States, which has ruined the youth, by the way.
I think it's kind of been on the way out for quite some time.
Yeah, it is, and they're replacing it with SEL, which is even worse. Anyway, Robert Mueller, not the special counsel Mueller, Robert Mueller, this guy.
Muller.
Yeah, from about 25 years ago, he wrote a book titled 2,000 Ideas for a Better World, which he published in 4 volumes in the lead up to the year 2000. And he delivered this book and a summary of the key spiritual points to the UN Secretary General in March of 1999 in advance of the Millennium Assembly, with the hope that it would guide UN policy and global spirituality in 2021 and the third millennium. He then went on to publish 5,000 more ideas. The book is shocking in its contents, and that's what James Lyndsey is talking about. And this thing blew me away, Barry.
Yes.
Well, what were your initial thoughts as you witnessed what he was saying?
That's why I couldn't wait to share it with you. Now, I'm going to say Lyndsey took apart. So there's 2,000 of those doctrines, and he went through a lot of the most important ones and then defined them and showed us how it's true. It's very inspired by Marxism, but the UN is intending to make themselves as something of a deity in and of themselves and have 100% control over every aspect of our lives. That's really all there is to it in a nutshell.
That was very well said, Barry. You just condensed 3 hours of reasoning down to 30 seconds.
But you have to listen to it to believe it, though. If you really hear what I said, you're going to be like, oh, conspiracy theory again, until you have Lyndsey break it down and back it up with actual facts. He's reading for word right from Mueller's own what do you want to call it? Theology.
His 2,000 Ideas is a guide. Awful. It's a guidepost for the goals of the UN. So you look at their 2030 agenda, it's all wrapped up in these 2,000 ideas. And, this guy, if you read any of this, it is really some long hair kind of stuff going on right here.
What gets me, Merle, is I didn't know much about the UN, to be perfectly honest, prior to this, but I had positive feelings about that. I thought that, this is part of us, trying to cooperate with the world. We have this where we can be heard. Oh my God, no, it's a completely nefarious organization.
Oh, absolutely.
Even being called the United Nations sounds like we're implicated in it, And I think that we've distanced ourselves completely from them.
Let me just read a couple of things here just to give you a flavor for this. But this is in his 4th volume. He's got 17 ideas that he puts out that Lyndsey actually goes over. I'm not going to go over all of those. I'm just going to give you a sampling here. But in those 17 ideas, the first one is that You need there should be a conference on a new cosmology. He talks a lot about the cosmos and that we're like cosmos beings. He's saying one should listen to psychiatrists, to biologists, to other scientists, and to people who have come up with new cosmologies. I'm not even sure what that is. From their views, one would extract a common denominator. And he goes on. Let me just say, he's advocating for a conference on new philosophy, a global philosophy, or a global way of life. Number 3, a new sociology is needed for which it would help us understand the meaning and role of all of the innumerable groups, entities, professions, and institutions. We need a new anthropology, like as in what Margaret Mead said. What? So we don't understand anthropology. We need a new anthropology. And then we need a new global cosmic spirituality. I have to read this one because this is a one world religion that he's creating here through the UN. He says, we've heard religious leaders of various faiths. It was illuminating. I hope that religious leaders will get together and define before the end of this century the cosmic laws which are common to all their faiths. They've been cosmic experts and interpreters of the heavens for a long time. They should tell the politicians what the cosmic laws are, what God or the gods or the cosmos are expecting from humans. It is good that we had last year the Oxford Conference on parliamentarians, scientists, and religious leaders, and that in the January 1990, a second conference will be held in Moscow. We must hope also the Pope will come before the year 2000 to the United Nations, speak to all religious and spiritualists on the planet, and give the world the religious view of how the third millennium should be a spiritual millennium, a millennium which will see the integration and harmony of humanity with creation, with nature, with the planet, with the heavens, and with eternity. What?
Oh, well, see, here's the thing. I think that if you don't know better, like Marxism, this
all sounds great.
It sounds like utopia.
Yeah,
until you
that's
realize
the problem.
Yeah. Till you realize you're going to be issued a uniform. You got your choice of 3 haircuts, and they're going to tell you what you can and can't do all day, every day. What you can worship, what you can't worship, what you can like. They're going to, and I think they're even alluding to rewriting history books. And so that,
absolutely, and they already are doing that. I mean, they want to control everything. They want to control data. They want to control truth. They want to control all your information. That's one of the things here is that we need a new political system, a proper planetary management, a new world philanthropy, a new world education, new world information. Outer space inspectors would be shocked by the wrong information that's being spread around the world. Oh, it's so horrible. So let's control all information. Exactly. And it's interesting too, some of these things that he talked about in the podcast about the numbers that they use, like this numerology. They're all into the number 17. So this guy's got 17 ideas. They're all into the number 13 as well, because it's a number of power in their ideological religion that they're trying to put on us. But after I listened to all of this, I was absolutely certain that James Lyndsey was right, that this is at its core a cult religious organization.
Oh, for sure it is. Now, and here's the other nightmare about this, as I mentioned earlier, this has become more and more apparent to me in the last year. All of these different, if you want to say, organizations that hate the U.S. and want to see us disrupted and taken control of. So now you got the UN. I mentioned before, Russia, China, Soros. I mean, you name it. All these different countries, they hate the freedom. They hate capitalism. They hate what our innovation and what we've become. And everybody wants to see us come down. So they love the divisiveness that is always being pumped into our culture. It's coming from a lot of different angles. And if we can realize this, we can do something about it. But until that awareness is there, we're under attack. We're under attack by ourselves because we're all feeding into it. And you know what? I wonder what's going to happen. I was thinking a lot about this because I was talking about my friend who he's fine with the inflation. He's fine with 50% inflation. And I know it's because the other alternative in his mind is Trump. What happens in 4 years when we can finally be rid of Trump? What is everybody going to, that's almost a religion in and of itself. What are they going to focus on then? Is it going to be just like everyone's mind is blank? I mean, what's going to happen?
I think that's actually what could happen is the true idiocracy begins. We haven't seen anything yet. I think it's after that when their minds are blank that Brondo's got electrolytes. But anyway, if you've seen that movie, that's funny. Well, given what we learned about James Lyndsey taught us about the UN, and of course the World Health Organization is an offshoot of the UN, and so is the World Economic Forum, by the way. They're all part of the UN, but here Republicans are sounding the alarm over Biden's latest partnership with the World Health Organization. This comes from Town Hall, but it's talking about how the Republicans have sent a letter recently. Dozens of senators warn that our president is selling out U.S. sovereignty to the international body under the guise of an emergency. They're saying that next month, during the 70th World Health Assembly, or WHA, your administration is expected to commit the United States to 2 international agreements that would strengthen the World Health Organization's authority to declare public health emergencies of international concern and expand the WHO's authority over member states during such emergencies. And they obviously feel that's unacceptable. And they're also saying that in order to do that, it would actually be legally, that's a treaty. And treaties have to be approved by 2/3 of Congress to pass. So the president can't just do this. But the fact is that there is this agreement that's pending here, and they're going to vote on this agreement coming up at the end of this month. This agreement is called the Pandemic Agreement, and it's also called the Pandemic Accord or the Pandemic Treaty. But for more than 2 years, these people have been working on this, and Biden has been in the middle of this whole thing. Bottom line, Barry, is this thing passes, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, has sovereignty over the United States and calls all the shots on how we respond to the next pandemic.
Nobody's going to buy into that in this country. I'm not going to say nobody. There's a faction that has become a religion, but it's a small faction. But boy, oh boy, there's going to be a majority of people that have awoken to what COVID was, me included, and it was a power grab. It was a complete power grab.
Absolutely, Barry. And this really goes along with what James Lyndsey was talking about, how the UN is a religious organization and that they are actually using these types of things, science, as part of their religious dogma.
They bastardize science.
And therefore, that's exactly right. Now, there's a term that James Lyndsey brought out in these 2 podcasts. The other one was called Digital Cattle that we listened to, which was also fantastic. But he brought up a term that I just want to throw out there, which I thought was interesting, that goes along with this whole religious cult, which is monopolized trust. And so here's the concept, is that this whole religion is the foundation of how this is going to grow, is through the financing of a monopolized trust. And DEI is the weapon used in the monopolized trust. So when we take a look at Budweiser and what happened with Budweiser in the commercial with Mulvaney and how it destroyed billions of dollars of revenue, the fact is that these hedge funds own all of these companies. And we remember we talked about how they've taken true competition out of the way because the store on either side of the street are really owned by the same people. And so prices go up, but they can also eliminate this store over here. And it doesn't hurt them. because they just divert all of their resources over to this store or to some other place because they own nearly 95% of the businesses in the world. This is a monopolized trust. And from a trust point of view, we look at the monopoly and how dangerous a monopoly is. And you and I have talked a lot about this, Barry, but the trust is that they own all the money. And so money is almost irrelevant. And it goes back to what's the guy's name? Weinstein, when he was talking to.
You corrected me on that.
Yeah, Weinstein. He was talking to somebody, I think it was Rogan, and he was saying, look, it's not about the money. It's about power. We think of things in terms of money. Like, a couple of years ago, you and I were looking at CNN and the New York Times and some of these other mainstream media outlets, and we're seeing how much money they're losing, and how could they possibly keep going down this road and losing, just bleeding all this money? Well, it's because they're part of the monopolized trust. And it doesn't matter how much money they're losing, because they'll be propped up in some way or another. You look at, like, for instance, the Communist Chinese Party and how they run their economy. Each of these businesses are a part of the Chinese Communist Party, and they can fix the numbers for any business and move money from one business to another to protect their own power. That's exactly what a monopolized trust is. And that is the heart of the engine that is putting this new religion out there. We don't see it as a religion, but when we see DEI, when we see what was that they're teaching in our schools? CRT,
critical race theory,
SEL now.
What is SEL?
SEL. Let me look that up to get the actual thing. It is, and when I tell you what it stands for, you're going to be like, "Oh crap!" Let's see if I can get that real.
All these acronyms that we've had to get familiar with, like critical race theory, ESG, environmental social governance. That's what the hedge funds are pushing on everybody. DEI. Diversity, which should be DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity. Oh, got it. That's the one that really gets me.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting close to this one. It's an educational process, and this is how they are really messing up our kids. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. I'm trying to find out what it's social and emotional learning. Think about that.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Did we call it brainwashing? Because that's what it is.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. Oh, I like that.
It's let me see. I've got a picture here that I'll share real quick and see if we can make sense of this. Let's see here if I can pull that up. Okay. Social and emotional learning. SEL is the process. Okay, we just talked about self-awareness, self-management, and relationship skills. This is now, it seems like this would be the responsibility of the parent to, instill these kinds of values rather than your school system.
Well, I think, like everything with Marxism, it always sounds good on the surface. Like, all of this sounds great. Self-awareness. Let's teach people about being self-aware and responsible decision makers. I think that sounds really good. You are right that our parents should be teaching us that, but we should be teaching parents that they should be teaching that.
Yeah, you're right about that. But when you look at these definitions, social and emotional learning,
I know.
And this is now
for sure.
How we're going to teach our kids, like, history. But it's really, this goes hand in hand with wokeism, which is really the language of this religion. We see DEI as one of the tools of this religion, but we don't recognize it as a religion. But these things are infiltrating in us so that it's almost like we're the frog in the pot, and the water is slowly getting hotter and hotter. That's what's happening. They know how to do this. They're doing it, and they're ruining these kids' lives. And we're seeing this happen And we're seeing it playing out on the college campuses. These kids that are getting ready to graduate are the same kids that missed their graduation because we screwed them out of their commencement during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids are messed up. I mean, think about that.
Oh, the depression and suicide rates had gone through the roof as a result. Dude, I'm going to switch gears just because we're running low on time, really.
Yep, we are.
I want to talk about this real quick, but it's very, very disturbing. Here are the top American cities. Joe Biden is sending hundreds of thousands of paroled migrants. Is your hometown on this list? There's Mayorkas.
Oh, God, I can't stand that guy.
Evil people. And the whole Biden regime, I know Joe doesn't know what's going on, but
he doesn't.
Look at this map. San Francisco, Los Angeles. So all the what do you want to say?
All the blues. Yeah.
Blue coastal,
all the nice
but
places.
Florida. Yeah. So let's see. Top 10 cities where migrants were flown in the DHS program. Miami absorbed 92,000 of these migrants.
I mean, wow.
Fort Lauderdale, 60,000. New York, 14. Basically,
they're
15.
Complaining so much.
They're already complaining about being crippled. Okay, right. Los Angeles, Tampa, all of these cities down to Atlanta. But my point, I guess my question is, what are they trying to do here? Because it
seems clear.
It seems clear to me that they're trying to disrupt this country.
Oh, absolutely. And
bring it down.
They're going to be able to vote. And why would they send them all to Florida? Because Florida is a bastion of conservatism right now.
Right.
And
Dallas and Houston.
They're desperate to change these things. Yep, exactly. And look at the exponential volume that they sent to Florida compared to these other places. You could almost add up all those other places and it would equal Fort Lauderdale and Miami. And, Fort Lauderdale and Miami are right next to each other. So what a concentrated area they sent these people to. And when you think about, like, if I lived in those cities, how angry I would be about how they purposely ruined my city. I'm paying my taxes. That's another thing, Barry. We pay taxes for these entities to protect us. And I don't know about you, but I'm paying through the nose on taxes. Dude, and I know everybody is. Yet we're not getting protected. We're not getting our return on investment here.
This whole deep state government is treasonous. 100% treasonous.
You're right.
It's so disturbing.
It appears to me that much of the railroading of Donald Trump into these indictments has everything to do with the fact that if he were to get back into office, I think some of these people are going to be facing some serious penalties for what they have done to our country. And treason carries a pretty strong sentence. And none of these people want any of that. And so I'm concerned for Donald Trump's health, actually.
Oh, yeah, dude. If he doesn't make it to November, I would not be surprised. Because they've tried everything else. Dave Smith has said that. They've tried everything else. They tried impeachments, all kinds of different litigation. None of this seems to work. So what else you got left?
God help that guy. I mean, seriously, I don't know how he's doing it right now. He's got the weight of the world on him.
I swear. Same. Do you want to talk about this incredibly important, controversial story about Louisiana? Wealthy white Louisiana residents.
Oh, yeah.
Win the right.
I was very interested in
dude, this is almost like seceding from the Union. They win the right to farm their own city and split from poor black neighborhoods in a landmark court ruling after a 10-year battle. It's St. George. Okay, we'll have this new city. St. George will have 86,000 residents across a 60 square mile area. And critics of this new city say the plan is racist, of course, and will create a white enclave. Baton Rouge, Louisiana residents fear the move will be economically devastating for their city. So what has happened basically is Baton Rouge was, just like the story we just talked about, shipping all these migrants to different cities. Yep, well, on the heels of, what was that hurricane? The big hurricane. Yeah, I think it was. But something like 15,000 of the poor people moved to Baton Rouge, or were moved to Baton Rouge. And so it just increased the ghetto areas of that. And so these people, the more affluent part of Baton Rouge, are like, their infrastructure is suffering, their educational system
ruined,
on the tubes, ruined, and they didn't feel safe anymore. So they petitioned 10 years now to form their own city so that they could actually pay for their own stuff. I said that to you. You're like, oh, I'm all for it. And I see a big conversation that needs to be had here. And I don't know where it all goes, but I think we need a lot of bright minds talking about this, because it has, if you draw this out and use this as a blueprint, we're going to divide America, and we're going to have half of America secede from the Union, and we're going to have a civil war. And maybe we need to do that eventually. But I mean, I know that that's what all of these different powers want us to do eventually. Lisa once said, I'll never forget it, very conservative person. She said, if we really want to solve these problems, we need true desegregation. We need true integrations of our communities, break up the ghettos, break up the affluent communities, have everybody intermingle, and that will force all of us to raise the bar, instead of like our poor communities, whether they're black or white. And we seem to forget that there are more poor white communities than there are black, but there are. And we never can talk about that. No, we talk about the problem of America's white supremacy. It's ridiculous. And the privilege, white privilege, that's the one that always gets me, the white privilege. Yeah, tell that to the people in the trailer parks or in West Virginia. And anyways, I think that this issue is much broader than it may seem, because I think at first glance you say, yeah, these people work really hard, and they do. They work really hard. This is where the white privilege thing gets me. Are you privileged that you drive 45 minutes to get to work every day because you went out to suburbia so your family could be safe and your kids could have a good education? Is that privilege? And that you work your ass off all day, and then you come home and you bring it home, and then you take your kids maybe to church, but you go to their school programs and all that, and you're busy every minute of the day. Is that your privilege? Or are you sacrificing all day, every day, so that your family can have a good life? That's not privilege. That's sacrifice. So this story kind of puts it under a microscope. I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm saying we need to talk about this a lot more. Do we segregate again more so that these people can have their rights that they're working hard for, and let the poor people suffer? Or do we integrate more? What do you talk?
Okay. So I've got a few things to say on this. This is a great topic, actually, because
it's deeper than it looks like on the surface.
So the way I see this, Barry, is that first off, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the state of Louisiana is a poor state compared to the rest of the states in the Union. There's a lot of poverty there. Baton Rouge being one of the leading areas of poverty, but when I see, it's like you got to read between the lines on all of these kind of articles, right? Really every article and every news category these days. What caught my eye was moving people into the city, and how through Katrina, and how that had impacted the city in a terrible financial way. They were already hurting before that happened, but I'm imagining if I were to have bought a house in that area, and I'm looking at my infrastructure, I can't get my kids educated any longer. I'm paying through the nose for, I worked really hard, so I live in the nicer section of town because of the sacrifices that I've made. And now, but my kid is threatened at school by people that don't have anything to lose. And so this idea comes up of, hey, well, maybe we make the city into two. So my first thought on that is that if this was poor, if it was an all white area and you had poor white people and then more affluent white people in this other area, that this wouldn't be the big issue that I think it's turning into right now, because we're so hypersensitive about racism.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a if black and white people weren't involved. But here's the thing, Barry,
I gotta pause you.
Yeah, Barry, I'm just going to go back to the fact that if this were all white people and it was poor white people and rich white people or well-to-do white people, that this probably wouldn't be a mainstream story.
Right.
And I think that these kinds of stories are planted again to disunite us.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, it looks like the city of Baton Rouge made decisions that would make other citizens that are trying very hard with their finances, would make it very difficult for them to serve their families. And so these people are looking to be able to take care of their families, not necessarily create a white enclave. So I kind of feel like, unless you're saying that black people aren't allowed to move to the city, then it's not really a white enclave. And so the way that our journalists, our so-called journalists, are writing these articles, they're writing it so that they get a rise out of us emotionally, rather than actually giving us the facts of the case. Right. And so I think that if your city is making decisions that are causing you to become less of a prosperous person, then you have to try to fight that as a community. And if the community is not willing to make changes, that's what I'm saying, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Try to make changes in the community. But if they're just unwilling to, and they continue to do these things against your liberties, then you've got to get out of that situation. And I think that constitutionally, these people have a leg to stand on.
I agree. And I think a simplified way to put this, and the Marxist movement is always about taking from the more privileged, I hate that word.
That's right.
The more well-to-do, and giving it to the poorer people. And that's the only methodology.
And that's how they made the wealth transfer. Right.
Capitalism or a more conservative movement isn't. They'll paint it as, oh, you're cruel and you just want all the wealth. No, that the more conservative thing will be like, no, let's take these poor people and let's incentivize them to do better. Let's go into those communities and raise them up. Let's not push this one down. Let's raise this one up. And you said it right.
Don't give them a fish. Teach them to fish.
Teach them how to fish, and they'll be able to survive, feed themselves for a lifetime. Right.
You know, Barry, I heard this great analogy on this, where a college student, freshman in college, she comes home, she tells her dad, Dad, you're wealthy, and, you should be paying more taxes and giving to more of these government programs. And they've had these conversations before where she feels like he's an oppressor because he makes all this money. And of course, she's going to college on his dime. And so rather than fight that battle, he says to her, well, let me ask you this. How's school going? And she, oh man, school's so hard. But I'll have you know, I've got a 4.0 grade point average, and I study all the time, and I'm doing all this work and everything. Not like Mary. Mary, she's out there partying all the time, and she's not going to classes. She's sleeping in and everything. And she's got like a C average. And then the dad says, well, I tell you what. Why don't you, in the spirit of equity, give away one of your grade points to her, so that she's, instead of a 2.0, she's a 3.0, and then you'll both be 3.0. And she says, what? That's not fair. I've been doing all this studying, and I've been doing all this working, and she's partying and being with all the guys and all this stuff. And she's just, you see where this is going. And
dude, of course.
It is a great way. It's a great way to get this out there.
And what will also happen is your C student right there will then do less. Oh, I'm getting this. I don't have to go to class at all. That's what will happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to fight for my right to not do anything at all.
There you go. And that's what we're dealing with here.
That's what's
all right. I want to just bring up a couple other things. One in particular, you'll find very interesting. Tulsi Gabbert was on Rogan a couple of days ago, and boy, I see her name, I'm going to listen every time. just love her. She's just very clear-headed, very clear thinking. She got railroaded out of the Democratic Party simply because she wouldn't take corporate funding. So anybody that won't be part of the deep state is going to get railroaded out. She said, oh, what do you think about the TikTok ban? This is where I'm going with this for a minute. Yeah, just briefly. What did you think about? Are you for it or against it?
I'm never for censorship. However, I believe that TikTok is a foreign, an enemy, run by an enemy state that wants to destroy America, and that's an exception to the rule.
And that's what I thought all along as well. I mean, this is a Chinese thing infiltrating us, stealing our information. Well, she's on the inside. She read the bill. She read everything. Rogan brought it up and she goes, oh my God, no, way against this ban. This reads exactly like the Patriot Act. And they are paving the road to get to X, Twitter, because that's the free speech platform.
Yeah, I see that. Of course, our enemies of free speech would use a gimmick like this to be able to hurt us. And, the bottom line for me is that it's better to have a rogue communicator like not Twitter, but TikTok.
X.
Like, I'd rather keep TikTok here. As long as I can still tell the truth, I'd rather have the liars allowed to say their thing too. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I would just
advise people not to go on there.
At the end of the day, truth has evidence and lies don't. And so as long as we can get up and reason, then that's good. And I see exactly what you're saying. I was just having a conversation last night with somebody where I was saying, look, if the KKK wanted to have a rally across the street, I wouldn't like that. But I wouldn't try to stop them from speaking, because if I stop them from speaking, then they can stop me from speaking.
Correct.
And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not into censorship. I hate that this is an enemy that's trying to influence our kids. And I think we just need to get people to understand that that's what it is. Unfortunately, that message has been quashed so much that the message gets lost. And that's really where the problem is. And that has a lot to do with censorship itself.
Yeah, censorship is a big problem. They're coming at us in so many different directions and always trying to package this up into something like it's so good and helpful for us. Never going to
misinformation. Yeah.
And
you heard Robert Mueller saying that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I want to I took the time to write down her closing words from that podcast, because I thought they were really powerful. Let me read this to you, and then you go ahead and take it away. The Biden-Harris cannot remain in power due to their unprecedented abuse of power, undermining the rule of law, politicizing our government entities, targeting Americans who happen to be their political opposition, whether it's Donald Trump or the mom protesting at a Board of Education meeting to have their say in the child's education. This is happening across the country, and if we don't stop them and hold them accountable, that part is important to me, they will continue to erode away our freedoms to the point it will be impossible to get them back. America will no longer be the land of the free and the home of the brave. God, this chokes me up. Will be the country where you'll be afraid to say, hey, a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl, for fear of facing the consequences. Jeez,
I feel the same way you do, Barry. That's a sobering thing, and I feel like we're very close to the point of no return on this.
Agreed. That's why I said it was very important to me what she said about and hold them accountable. We don't hold anyone accountable now in these last 4 years. The election interference that has been going on for over 4 years is unbelievable. It's right in front of our face all day, every day. The Hunter Biden laptop crap, the Twitter files unveiled the censorship that has been going on. Nobody's held accountable.
No. And
nobody in the Biden administration will be held accountable for the tyranny and the acts of treason that they've been doing.
And think about Epstein and how we know that's all in our government. To look at the border, look at Ukraine, what the heck is going on there?
The fleecing of America.
caused this. We're throwing gasoline on the Israeli-Gaza conflict. In fact, it looks like the thing that's happening with Iran right now, with the terrorist network that they have, and how this infusion of cash with the forgiveness of the sanctions has only strengthened their ability to create terror around the world. And we're seeing that in living color right now. It, at the very core of all of these dastardly things, seems to be the United States government.
Yeah, that is my point. Our own president of the United States, the Manchurian candidate, who's a puppet and being played by the deep state that literally wants to turn us into China. For sure. Authoritarian all the way. Hey, we got to lighten up and get out of here.
I almost cried over that.
Same, dude. Wasn't her words, though? Weren't they important? Sobering
yes.
is a good way to put it. So I wanted to ask you, did you finish the season 1 of Fallout?
No, I haven't. The fact was,
I wanted to talk about it.
Oh, I know. And I have been, I think I'm on something like episode 6. We had to take a pause on that show. And because there are so many dystopian things that are happening, it started to cause a little bit of anxiety.
Oh,
so I had to back off from that a little bit and come back to it. I love the writing on this. I think it's good. I can absolutely see in it what is happening today. And
there's a lot of illusion.
Yeah.
I can't wait till you're done, because I want to talk about it in more detail, because there's a lot. Like, I wonder, were they actually trying to use this what's the word I'm looking for, allegory, illusion, were they intentionally trying to do a parody of like Canada with their vault society versus the Wild West that is the outside society? I don't know how far along you are at season.
No, it really looks like that to me.
Okay.
It really does look like that. And I love the different mentalities between this girl from the vault and the guy that's out there, and just how they see things. I guess where I am right now is when they go to vault number 2, and she goes down there and she's just like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is terrible. Which is, she's from the vault, and he's all comfortable in a robe, like, feed me more popcorn. He's from the Wild West, and they're giving him all this stuff. And he's like, oh, I love this. And what a commentary that is. Like, she is from the woke world. He's from the world where you got to fend for yourself and eke it out for yourself.
And he gets seduced.
But then when he gets all these luxuries, he's not that guy anymore. He's complacent, and he's going to let all these things happen. And so this is,
and soon he's going to be basically a slave.
God, this is how they take over the world.
That's Marxism. That's Marxism.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You're going to get all this free stuff. Yeah. Oh, I love that shit. In fact, I might.
They had that sign over the room that they were staying in, where they were like basically guinea pigs for them. They didn't know that they were guinea pigs, but that's how they were looking at them, like a lab rat. And that's how our government, the dystopian word for our government is Leviathan, a huge beast that cannot be, there's nothing you can do, and the Leviathan will crush you. This is what we're looking at in this movie, and how that whole thing works, and can it be brought down? We'll have to find out.
Yeah, man. We always talk about America's crazy in the fact that the pendulum has to swing so crazy, so far left or right before it swings back. Like, just when you think we're going to blow ourselves up, what I'm saying is, I'm hoping this is the year that thing starts swinging the other way, and there becomes such an awareness, such a urgency to tear down our government and reclaim our freedoms, that it becomes an impossible wave to stop. Because, man, we need to dismantle like 75% of this government.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. It is the Leviathan. We talked about how bureaucracies work, and this is a ginormous bureaucracy where it's not my job to help you. It's my job to extract from you.
That was good. You tied it full circle with
Let me take this full circle. Right on, Barry.
All right, guys. Hey, go to Over 50 Starting Over and sign up to our mailing list there. You get all this dropped right into your email box as it happens. Hey, subscribe at YouTube and share. Like our video, please. Most importantly, go to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. It's very important so we can reach more people. So we really appreciate it, guys. Please share and leave us some comments. We absolutely love that. Any party words, Merle?
No, this was a great show, and I hope to see everybody on the next one.
Yeah, all right. Thanks. Have a good weekend, buddy.